Everyone. My name is Savitha.
Hi, I'm Emily, and we're youth advisors for allcove, a mental health advocacy organization dedicated to providing support and care for youth ages 12 through 25. So today we're speaking with the program manager at allcove, Duy, for our YAG project, in which we're hoping to interview and learn more about the support providers at our organization. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Duy, and we appreciate you taking your time out of your weekend to speak with us.
No, of course, no worries.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. So first, to kick us off, could you please tell us a little more about yourself as well as your background?
Yeah. So, like you were saying, Emily, I'm Duy Nguyen. I'm currently the program manager at the allcove Center, overseeing the day-to-day operations. So a little bit about myself. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. So I got my master's in marriage and family therapy from the University of Southern California. And then I started working at a nonprofit as a MFT intern, and there I collected hours. I worked as an intern for a few years, I think it was about 3 years, and then I became eligible to get licensed. I became licensed at the same company, at the same nonprofit, and then I worked for a couple years, and then once I was eligible to become a supervisor, I was able to become a supervisor and a coordinator also in the same role. So I was at the same nonprofit for about 8.5 years before I came up to Santa Clara County about 4 years ago. And then from there, at Santa Clara County, I was the lead clinician for our commercially sexually exploited children's behavioral health program. And there, that was really similar to allcove in the sense that it was a brand new behavioral health program. So we were kind of building that up, we were setting that up. And it was really geared towards youth who are at risk, suspected or confirmed of sexual exploitation. And then I came on to allcove, about 6-7 months ago now. Officially, it was like about 4 months ago. And that's where I've been since. So that's a little bit me in terms of my clinical background. My primary training is in cognitive behavioral therapy, and in like a quick snippet, it's like basically our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all interconnected. So when we're struggling, it's because, the belief is that we've developed certain beliefs about ourselves through our experiences that maybe skew negative. So which then impacts our behaviors, which then makes us feel a certain way, which then, affects our thinking, which then again, it becomes this vicious cycle. And then in order to kind of intervene, we kind of tackle, our behaviors, or we take a look at our behaviors, or we take a look at our thoughts and our thinking and our perspective. And that's the perspective that I really align with. I'm really someone who really, I think for me, it's when I'm able to kind of do something about it, or I kind of have a sense of control of managing my mental health, I tend to kind of do better. So yeah, that's pretty much, my general background.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing about your experiences. It really means a lot that there's a lot of amazing and inspiring support for the youth in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So you've already touched on this briefly with your introduction, but what brought you to allcove?
So I learned about allcove about a year and a half ago, right when it was first, I think it was starting up. I learned about the role. So then I started looking into, I heard, there was an opening for the program manager position. So I was really interested in it. So then I started researching, going online and seeing how, it was this, integrative model, having, all these six different service streams housed in one place. That was actually something that I always felt was really important in terms of like, mental health and wellness, because, mental health I always tell like my clients, right? Sometimes to address mental health issues, we have to focus on our physical health, right? And sometimes to address physical health issues, we have to focus on our mental health. And I always felt like, it was, we needed a holistic model, something that really tackled all components of well-being. So that initially attracted me to it, learning about that. But then like, as I dive deeper and learn how it was like really youth inspired, and like and how the program was developed by youth for youth, and just being able to kind of, because for me, I'm approaching my 40s, right? And then I'm looking at the future of the mental health field, and how do we break down those stigmas, and how do we get more people involved? And it's not guys in their 40s that are gonna like get young people to engage in these services, or to kind of start understanding mental health, right? And it's not, and then you look at the mental health field, right? All of the research, all of the everything that's been developed has always been by older white men for white college students, so just how just like I think how allcove kind of really focused on this diversity and inclusion, and having those voices in terms of like programmatic development and implementation. I thought, for me, I was like, this is what needs to happen in the mental health field. We can't be doing the same thing over and over and expect people to, to value mental health services or to engage in mental health services, when it's like, it's always been, 60, 70-year-old white men who have been telling us how to do it a certain way. So like, that was what really brought me, and I wanted to be a part of that.
I totally agree. I definitely think it's like super important and empowering that allcove has this like holistic model that I think you don't see in a lot of other places, and it like focus on health from a lot of different perspectives and like approaches, and I think it helps you feel more comfortable. So I also like really appreciate that, and definitely one of my favorite things about allcove is just how much diversity there is in the community, how it like welcomes all sorts of youth from different places. So yeah, thank you. For our next question, I realized I think I did not actually copy paste it. That's my fault. But
I think you did. I have it.
Oh, okay, cool. So on to the next question. So what is your definition of mental health? And since coming to allcove, has your perspective on mental health changed in any way?
For me, I know that we talk about I think I kind of talked about it before a little bit, but like, to me, mental health is just overall wellness, and it's mental health, it's physical health, it's spiritual health, and I think it's like, these are all the components that kind of really factor in how our mental health is, and it's and it's like it's how we see the world, it's how we perceive the world, it's how we see ourselves in our world, how do we see others, and how do we actually view the world in itself, and I think when we have a really positive outlook around ourselves and others in the world, we're able, I think our mental health tends to do better. We tend to take care of ourselves better. So I would say, so this is the approach that and perspective I've always had. And I think coming to allcove was something that actually just kind of reinforced it. So I wouldn't say that it's changed. There wasn't like a major change, because I think how I viewed mental health really aligns with how what the allcove model is all about. But I think just being able to be within a system in which we have this integrative model, I'm able to see how mental health can really how we can really support the mental health of our population within this way, within an integrative model. Whereas it's always been, okay, mental health here, and then you refer out to you go somewhere else for physical health, and then you go somewhere else for spiritual health, or you go somewhere else for, support around education and employment or whatever, right? It's always been separate, but like to be able to see that, I think, since being here, it's just a really rewarding and meaningful experience to kind of see that as I talk with like the providers here, when they're able to kind of connect with the psychiatrist and then immediately connect to their doctor and then go connect to like a peer support counselor. It really helps, really helps support the youth that come into the centers.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like it's often overlooked that our mental health affects so many parts of our daily life, like how much work we can do and how we feel physically and like so on and so forth. And it's also really nice how, like, as a whole, like with more mental health awareness, like our views of like mental health and ourselves as a whole has just been impacted. And so given your background in marriage and family therapy and your current experiences working with the diverse youth in the Bay Area, in what ways has religion, family, and culture affected your view of therapy and mental health?
Yeah, so for me, with my background, so I'm Vietnamese American. I was born here. My parents immigrated here around when they were in their late 20s. They never really learned the language. There's always been, there's also a lack of understanding around mental health. Like there are phrases and there's certain, they know what a therapist is, but like I don't think there's full understanding of like what like a therapist or a social worker actually does, right? It's always, and there's there's a lot, growing up, you hear a lot of stigmatizing language, right? And, where it's like, oh, you're working, oh, so you want to work with crazy people, you want to work with, insane people or whatever, right? And these are just the terms that they grew up. So there was really a lack of understanding. And for me, myself, that's something that I really didn't get and really didn't start understanding until I went to college and majored in psychology. And I think that's when I started to kind of maybe have a better understanding of what that was. And then I just saw, even now, right, even with some of the, even with youth people and our population now, there's still somewhat of a lack of understanding of mental health, and I know, obviously, if you were to, I think there's a lot more people who are now involved and they're more open about it. But like, I see people who like are, they've taken some psychology classes and then they're, and then they're psychoanalyzing people, right? And they're making these kind of assumptions and statements, which, if you were to kind of go through like the full on like training and education, it's like these are things that you would never do in your personal life. You would never psychoanalyze a friend. You would never diagnose a person after a couple of meetings or label someone in a certain way. So I think for me, I think my view has definitely, I had to really check myself in the sense that like there's things that were also ingrained in me growing up, just in terms of like working with friends and just kind of, and then being careful about not making certain assumptions within certain populations, right? Just because I am Asian and I might be working with an Asian, I think with the Palo Alto population, you see a bigger Asian community, but then me assuming that my experiences is the same experience as a youth that may be coming in here, that would be wrong, right? So I think as I've gotten older and I've started to kind of understand like where my family, my background comes from, like, I've learned to kind of unpack that and really be more patient with the people that I work with in terms of like my clients or their families, and then within my own family, because I think it's just more often than not, it's just a lack of like knowledge, right? Like they just don't know. They just know what they've seen in movies or they've seen in shows. And like you see, you see a lot of things that are really not that are really not appropriate, right? Like, yeah, I think in terms of culture, I think I've always took I try take an approach of being having cultural humility, just meaning that when I work with anyone of a different background, I really try to understand and get to know them and their culture and make that really a part of our treatment. And then as a manager and supervisor, I really encourage the clinicians that I work with to really focus and unpack, things about sexual orientation, gender identification, social economic class, ethnic background, because these are, I think, really important topics to talk about. And they're not really things that often come up. Right, even within a diverse population, you'd be surprised where, like, I've had youth that I've worked with where I've asked them, oh, what are your pronouns? What's your sexual orientation? They're like, oh, you know what? No adults ever asked me that before, and we're here in the Bay Area, right? So just because we're in a diverse community doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't this, systemic racism or or there isn't some type of, diversity and inclusion and equity is a given, right? Even within this community, even within the Palo Alto community, there's still, there is inequities that are happening, and it's important for us to kind of still address that, because turning a blind eye to all of that, it's just leading us to leading to complacency where there isn't really a lot of change.
Thank you so much. That was also don't worry about saying however much you wish to say. Yeah, so I feel like it's both disheartening, but also kind of like hopeful in that there are so many people dedicated to breaking down stigmas and the cultural and like structural barriers that prevent some people from accessing the help that like they might want to like access or look for, but just have been prevented from doing so. And I also really love the point that you brought up about like not making assumptions and being dedicated to cultural sensitivity and humility. Not only about like when you talk to a client or some youth who comes into the centers, but also about like what mental health is as like a whole, or like mental health care, like not making assumptions about what a therapist will do, because I think that both of those kind of negatively impact the care as a whole. And it just reminds me of how Alcove has always been, like for me personally, a very good place to learn and grow from the perspectives of other people. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really love your perspective, especially since you were able to start working on the stigma against mental health so early on, as compared to us, and left a legacy of change that allows us, like youth, to feel more safe and accepted here. And it's really amazing how allcove empowers not only the youth, but also just the entirety of the community through people like you. and what values and lessons did you learn from your work experience about providing direct services that you found helpful during your time supporting youth at allcove?
So I would say the values and lessons that I would have learned the most is like, how do we be intentional around bringing in youth voice and then giving youth the choices around like their options, right? I think sometimes we kind of get in this mode where we have to, we're just trying to help. And then we kind of get in this idea. And I think for clinicians, for myself, for anyone, like, we all have the best intentions, but sometimes we think, you kind of get into that parental role where you're like, I know what's best for you, right? And you tell them what is best for, and I think the lesson that I really have learned, and I think that I try to work with all of the clinicians around, is to ensure that how do we bring youth voice into this, whatever it is, even if it's not just like at the programmatic level, but like within individual sessions and interventions, right? Because going back to how I was sharing about how I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, or like that's my primary training, and like I identify with that theoretical orientation. Like that doesn't mean that I would sit with, you, Savitha or Emily, and be like, hey, we're going to sit here and we're going to just do a thought record. Okay. A thought record is a core intervention of cognitive behavioral therapy. And I do want us to I would want to introduce that, but I wouldn't be like, this is what we're going to do. I would, I think, I would, work for myself, working with youth, and then with the clinicians, as I'm providing clinical supervision to them, I was like, okay, they are expressing these negative thoughts. So we know some of the interventions that we can take is a thought record. So how do we introduce this to them, let them know what a thought record is, and then get feedback? How do we get constant feedback within the session itself as well too? Because I think ultimately for mental health and then the therapy process, I think the person is the driver of that whole process. You're going to get what you put into it, and thought records may not necessarily work for everybody, but I would want you to be for youth working with them, to be like, okay, this is what I think about it, and then but I don't know if that will work for me. Or maybe they would be like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, or let's think about how we can kind of adapt that intervention, right? So it's like, how do we take any, even the smallest intervention, whether it's deep breathing or it's meditation, it's like, okay, does the youth actually connect with this intervention? And then if they do, okay, how do we implement it in a way that's actually going to stick, that they're going to be able to do within their own daily lives, right? So I think it's just like, so like I know, like, having the YAG, right? We look at, for your role, you're looking at more global, you're looking at implementation, you're doing programmatic ideas, coming up with innovative ideas to implement certain things. But like, I think like we actually have to bring it all the way down to even up to that individual level, and constantly make sure that we are getting the youth feedback, because I think that's how you also get people to be engaged and be more of the driver of their mental health process, because it's, when they're more, I think when, people are more involved in the therapy process, they just are more committed to it, and they're more willing to kind of stick it out and actually implement it in their own personal life. So yeah, I would say, like, again, it just doesn't stop at, oh, hey, give us ideas around how to do this, this workshop, right? But it's like, okay, actually taking it down to that, to the micro level as well in that individual sessions.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, thank you for your insight into how, I guess, your approach or how you like to support youth works. And then also, I just want to say that it's like really touching that you kind of strive to bring change at like different levels of mental health care and allowing like youth to have more autonomy and I think like control or commitment, I guess, to like how their care works. So not only is it in the service level, but also like in individual sessions. I think that's really great. And I haven't heard about that much and not from like other people. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And the next question, additionally, kind of tacking on to the previous question, what had inspired you to leave direct service and go into another area in the LMFT field?
So yeah, question 5, what inspired you? So I think, it actually, I actually didn't like walk into college thinking I was going to become a therapist. I actually, kind of fell into it, to be honest. Like I was, so I went to UCLA for my bachelor's. I didn't really have a major, so I took a lot of the general education classes just to kind of see what stuck. And then, what I noticed is that the psychology classes held my attention the most. I also ended up doing the best in those classes. So then I kind of I ended up choosing the major. Then from there, I started working at at a group home. So I don't know, they don't really have group homes anymore, but group homes are like where back in the day, when I was probably around both of your ages, they had these group homes where they would house youth who have been removed and didn't have really caregivers, so they were placed at these group homes. So I started working there as like a residential counselor, and that's kind of where my really passion for mental health really developed, because I met like a therapist there who really helped guide me and supported me as I was like working with with these youth living in these group homes. And it was really some of the best, looking back, it was a really, really positive experience. I would take the youth out to outings. We would go down to, this was in Southern California, so we would go to San Diego, we would go visit, we would be able to take them and do things with them, and then we would cook with them, or we would cook for them, and then we would do groups and just kind of really try to connect with these youth to give them a really positive experience, and help them develop positive relationships with like adults. And so that for me was like kind of really where I think I was like, okay, this is definitely what I want to do, and then like how do I further that. So even though I really, really do enjoy the direct service as I kind of grew and developed in my career, I've also learned that I really enjoyed working with clinicians and really helping, again, teaching and guiding, around like some of these more, some of the therapeutic principles, and just working with clinicians and seeing how they are able to kind of, process and work through their struggles as they're providing those direct services. And I think that was also a very rewarding experience, and just so that's how I kind of shifted more into like a supervisory role, more of a managerial role. Because I think I think for me it was just I got to the point where like it's not that I felt like, oh, I know everything now at this point, because I even as a supervisor or manager, I always feel like, okay, there's still so much for me to learn. There's still so much I don't know, but I've gotten enough experience where I can maybe now pass some of that along, and create these branches, right, of people who are like, maybe passionate and try to inspire them to continue down the mental health field, because I think we need more, right? We need more. So I just want to be able to support and continue to build on that mental health, the mental health field overall.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's honestly surprising just learning what youth support looks like just a couple years ago, and just how important that connection between youth voice and adults is, and just how you've helped create a space at allcove to be able to discuss our issues with people who can create more momentous change than we could as youth. And honestly, just how the training and support that clinicians receive is just as important as the services that they provide for clients. So I think that's really cool. Do you have any advice for people who may be struggling with mental health from school and otherwise?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I think some of the advice that I would have is, lean on your support, your support network, because there are, I think sometimes when we're really struggling and we're overwhelmed, we get into this mindset that we have to do this all on our own, everything is on our shoulders, and that's just so much pressure for young people, right? You think about all the things that you have to worry about or kind of carry and figure out. It's not only are you still developing, but you're figuring out what do you want to do for your future. People are asking you about that. You're managing your social relationships, you're figuring out where to go to college, what to do, how to learn to study, and how to manage the coursework, right? So there are people, that are out there to help you. And it doesn't have to be a therapist, it doesn't have to be, a professional, but there are people in your life who really care. I think for the most part, right, there's people in your life that really care about you and support and want you to be successful. I would lean on them, or I would encourage people to lean on them. And then I would just think about, like, if you're struggling, sometimes when you're struggling with school or other stuff, sometimes it's okay to take a break from whatever it is that you are, struggling with, 15 minutes a day, whatever it is that you need to take, however much time you need to take away from whatever's stressing you out. It won't be the end of the world. We all just deserve some type of respite, right? There's the reason that we all get vacations, right? There's a reason that we get breaks, spring break, summer breaks, so I would just, again, focus on that, that being kind and patient to ourselves, and really, practicing that self-care, and then going back to, like, just, in terms of, like, when we're struggling with our mental health overall, what, again, look at it holistically. Don't just focus on your mental health, but look at, like, okay, are there things that you can do physically? Are there things that you can, do, like, in terms of walking, making sure that you're exercising, making sure that you're eating right, making sure that you're taking care of your body, and making sure that you're sleeping enough, right? Because I think when these things are kind of, when you're not getting enough sleep, or you're not eating right, or you're not getting enough physical activity, it's just there's this snowball effect. So take a look at, it's not just maybe stress from school, but maybe it's, there's all these other factors at play too. And take a look at everything that's going on in your life.
Definitely. I really want to, echo, I think, what you said. One, that it should be approached holistically, and also, just being kind and patient to yourself. I think, taking breaks and knowing that it's okay to ask people for help, even if it's something that you may initially or instinctively want to keep private, whether it's because you don't want to burden other people, or it's oh, everyone goes through this, so my struggles must be invalid. I think that's something that a lot of people, if not everyone, struggles to kind of learn at some point in their life. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out, and also showing us ways that we could take care of ourselves more. But moving on, we also want to learn more about you. So in your free time, what are some activities that have helped improve your health? Health or mental health?
Yeah, so I am definitely I've always been a really physically active person. So I do try to work out before I come to work. It's been more difficult now that I have a 8.5-month-old son. But playing with him and chasing him around is physical activity in itself. That's a bit of a workout. Carrying him around is a workout. So that's always been important to me. And then on the weekends, me and my wife, and before we had our son, we were always pretty active. We would go on hikes, or we go to the beach. And now that he's a little bit older, we plan on bringing that back, because I think that is important. For a while there, before having a child, we would also cycle. So we would go on these long 30 to 50 mile bike rides, and it was the whole get up. We had the clip-on shoes, the helmets, the shorts with the padding, everything, right? The road bike. So we go all out. It's hard now. You can't really do that with a kid, but maybe when he's older and he's able to, he learns. So that's always been a big part of it. Traveling is really, really something that we really enjoy. And we haven't been able to do that too much because of the pandemic the past couple of years. But I'm hoping that as things kind of improve, we can start doing that again. And within traveling, for me, I think what's really helpful is the food. So I really enjoy going to places and trying new foods and just eating really well, and and then coming home and trying to replicate dishes or try to cook dishes. So really food, cooking it, whether it's cooking it or eating it, So I try to have so I definitely try to do that on the weekends, where I'll tend to do bulk cooking, basically, to prep for myself for the whole week and for the family, for my family. So then that way, and I always want to do a Vietnamese dish. I always try to do something new, something that that also again connects back to my own culture. There's so much, there's a lot of good Vietnamese food. So I always try to do something there. So yeah, those are the main things. So food, travel, exercise, yeah, for sure. Those are things that, and of course spending time with my family.
Kind of a tangent, but I also really like biking, but because it's been really busy these past few months, I haven't been able to as much. But you said something about cycling, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
me too. But yeah, thank you so much for telling us about this really personal part of your life, because having a work-life balance and just a balance with physical and mental health overall is super important, as you said, and it sounds like you really strive towards that.
So that is all the questions that we have for you today. So again, thank you so much for being here and for your amazing insight into all of our questions. And yeah, so thank you for coming into our space today. We really appreciate your presence and of course all your dedication and work in allcove. Yeah, so thank you so much. I think that's all I have, but I'm not sure if Savitha had anything else to add.
Yeah, just the same thing as Emily. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday morning to talk to us. And also really hope that we could work with you later on as well, since we'll still be seeing each other.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome, and no worries. I really enjoyed this experience. And again, like I said, the more people that we can kind of get into the mental health field, the better. So if this even attracts or gets other people involved, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think part of the reason why we were hoping to do this is not only for us, but also for any potential people who are interested in allcove or just interested in accessing mental health care, to help them better understand, the people behind the care that they would be accessing. I think, it's it'll be comforting to kind of better understand the humans behind the services, rather than just a paper about the services that you'd access. So yeah, again, thank you for speaking with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, have a good rest of your week or weekend.
Yeah, have a good weekend.
Yeah. All right, bye.
All right, bye.